Welcome to the Practice Leader Podcast, brought to you by Ascent, a show for medical practice administrators who feel stuck in the daily chaos and want to lead with intention. I'm Zed Williamson, founder and CEO of Physician Growth Accelerator.
And I'm Paul Richards, president of Ascent and director of otolaryngology at the University of Utah School of Medicine. Every week, we explore what high-performing leaders are doing in real time, so you can stop reacting and start leading with purpose, strategy, and results.
If you're listening to this podcast, obviously you're busy. And you may have heard the old story about sharpening your saw, and that if you were to have two people racing to cut wood, and one person never stopped to sharpen their saw, they would always finish last behind the person who would stop, sharpen their saw, and continue sawing. And that's why we're speaking with our guest today, Drew Franklin. He's the president-elect for Ascent and the chief strategy officer for Albany ENT. Drew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me. And thanks, Paul, for joining as well.
Absolutely. And, the saw sharpening story, I'm going to lead in really quick to Ascent and the annual meeting. And there may be people listening who have already registered for the upcoming annual meeting, and there may be people who have not registered. And what I wanted to do is have this conversation where we talk through realistically, what someone can truly expect from a potential outcome in attending the annual meeting. And before we start, I'm just going to acknowledge some things that may be true. If you haven't registered for the meeting, it might be because you think you're too busy. And this goes back to the person who doesn't sharpen their saw. I get it. You are busy. And there might be a lot of stress with the idea of leaving that busyness, but the value, you will benefit from it. You might also be concerned about asking for the investment. As a business owner, and obviously I can't speak for all business owners, but one of my favorite things in the world is when team members ask me to help them learn. And if that involves them taking time or me investing money, there is literally, it's one of my favorite things. And for most people in leadership, they will appreciate that you ask. And thirdly, you might just think that you're not going to be able to implement anything. And what I would say, this is because I'm not part of Ascent from a third party. I've been to a lot of meetings. Ascent, frankly, is one of the best run meetings that I've ever been to from the standpoint of actionable information, helpful speakers, and things that people can actually go home and take action on. So I know those may be the things that are keeping you, but just wanted to acknowledge that, get it, and want to talk about what may you actually walk away with. So with that, if this is their first year and they're finally joining, what could they expect to walk away with?
Yeah. So for me, the annual meeting for Ascent in Orlando is really the culmination of the year-round educational experience. It's where administrators come together, deepen conversations with each other that becomes core networking and helps them come away with an actionable plan for the coming year. Some of that is real curriculum. Some of that is coming into the meeting with a bunch of questions that you want to ask about how others handle different business situations, whether that's something related to the electronic health record, a business process, or otherwise. And so for me, what I think about as Ascent is that we are basically a business university without walls for ENT administrators. And to that end, I think it's important for somebody attending for the first time or deciding whether to come for the second or third time to really value both the core curriculum, but also the networking with other administrators who are going through common things. I would add that, with AI in its nascency, but now really coming full blown, I think we need to really start working together on these ongoing issues related to AI and the business of medicine. So I think that that's an important piece of why administrators should continue to come each year, because they will learn something new each year.
Right.
Yeah, things are changing quick. Paul?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you kind of hit it, Drew, where if you come in with kind of some thoughtful preparation of what you're looking to learn, how much better your experiences is. And I think that's something you can do with your physician group or one of your leaders is what are your questions, right? Like, what are you looking for me to find out? And I'll find it out because I can talk to 20 people about that issue or find an industry partner who's on the cutting edge of that question, right? There's your community of association, ENT administrators. There's also industry. This is a forum for industry, all the latest and greatest. So I would just echo your point to come prepared with what you're looking to learn, and you'll take away more.
Paul, something you said resonates with me, which is that I'm very used to administrators looking at the course list, going back to their physician and saying, hey, here's the business case of the types of things I want to attend in terms of the lectures, the keynotes, et cetera. But what you said actually makes more sense to me. And that is that you're coming in with the questions that you're looking to ask, bringing your own business issues and your own business process re-engineering ideas to the forefront, and then finding people with those common problems, those common opportunities, and working through those together. And that's very different from having a static agenda or curriculum and actually, making it more palatable. And I think a better business case to articulate beyond the foundational curriculum.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious, since I have access to president-elect, past president, think back to your first meeting. We'll start with you, Paul. Your first meeting, how did you end up getting to that meeting? Why did you go?
Yeah, thankfully there was a culture. My predecessor said you need to join Ascent and stay connected and go to their meetings. So thankfully there was that culture already established. Had there not been, it would have been a little harder to find it. Especially, you don't know how long you're going to be in a job. The world's changed a little bit. It's interesting how people kind of move around a little bit. But no matter if you're in it for 3 years or 15, where I'm at now, you still need the tools to be effective in the job. And you've got to be present. Like, don't be thinking, oh, I'm not going to be here long enough in this job to really matter. You got to be in where you are, be present where you are. Like right now, you need to be the best administrator you can be now and focused on that. And so I went to the meeting, and there was a lot going on. There was that course curriculum. That's kind of how I took it the first time. It's like, oh, okay, I can learn these things. That's cool. But as I learned more, I'm like, I've got hundreds of people here that are going to answer the questions that are itching and burning in our practice that I need. And that's the way I approach it now. That's the connection, the community that's so important. So, yeah, I'd say something like that.
So do you remember if you were surprised by anything specific at that first meeting or second meeting?
How much knowledge and experience people have around you. And when you're kind of isolated in your own little world, you go to a place like that and you learn that there's so many people that have done what you've done, experience the things that you're thinking you want to do. There's this network of resources at your fingertips. And now all of a sudden you have colleagues that you can call up and they're happy to be on the phone with you, walk you through those things. That was the biggest thing that just very jarring was like, I don't need to do this alone.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, I'm guessing your very first meeting, you weren't thinking, I'm going to be the president of this one day. So what was the catalyst to get to that point where it was important enough as an organization for you to take that position?
Yeah. You start receiving all the benefits. And at some point you're like, maybe I can give back, or you're asked to give back, or you have a mentor that says, hey, you know what? Why don't you come step up and kind of help out with this leadership role or volunteer committee or something? And those are monumental pivot points in your life. It'd be so easy to be like, I'm just too busy. I can't, I shouldn't, I don't know. I've got work and I got other things I want to do. And that decision alone, just to make the decision to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to serve on this volunteer committee. It made all the difference. And it's kind of scary how little decisions like that can pivot your whole life. Because I've had now 7+ years that I've been in leadership with Ascent to associate with just amazing people and give but really you receive more than you ever give.
So Drew, do you remember your first meeting and how you actually ended up there?
Yeah, I've been an ENT administrator since 2006. My first Ascent meeting was 2008. And the reason I went was because I was still a budding ENT administrator wanting to learn more. And that's the reason I went. But what I came back with was a lot more than that, because it wasn't just about something that I needed to learn. I learned how much more there was that other folks were the types of things that they were working on. And so that was one piece. But going back to something Paul said, is that very early on, from my first set of meetings, it imbued in me a sense of volunteerism, because like wanting to sort of give back and take a leadership role because you were, tapped by somebody. Hey, can you serve on this committee? Would you like to run for this? And joining the leadership council became an important priority for me early on, not just to learn for me and for my own practice and my own professional development, but also to give back to the community and pay that forward. And that, reaps rewards for me as well, but it's a sort of a different sense. So what I would say is that the original reason I went was because my boss at the time said, hey, I need you to go to this meeting because there's some curriculum that I need you to better understand in ENT practice management. I want you to do the anatomy course. I want you to do this. But what I came out with was so much more than that. The sense of networking, the types of practice management issues that were being faced, and allowed me to become a better, more rounded administrator and to grow within my own organization and rise up in the ranks of a medium to large ENT practice.
Yeah, that's great. I think people listening, look, none of us have all the answers. There's not a human on the planet that does. And when we get together, our experience and shared wisdom really can help get to the answers you need based on, whatever you're battling or fighting today. So anybody listening to this, chances are you're struggling with something. And chances are that someone at the meeting has already struggled with it. And they either tried to solve it and they didn't, which is still a valuable conversation because you could avoid trying the same thing, or they've actually identified the root cause and they have solved it. And that's a beneficial conversation too. So it's really about, being around people who are at different points in their career. You could have someone who's a second-year administrator, a 20-year administrator, and there's wisdom from all around. And that's what such a value from these meetings. I'm curious, when, part of the meeting is the vendor partners. So Drew, would you mention, what the value is or impact is on that aspect of those conversations?
I think when you look at the exhibit hall and when you look at the industry partners who also contribute to the educational content at the annual meeting, their value add to the members and their value add to the meeting has to do with the types of situations that ENT practice managers find themselves in all the time, whether it's this, switching EHRs or finding a different accounting software or navigating the latest in AI, how to manage inbound referrals, how to engage with patients, how to manage patients' sentiment, and how these things are all interoperable with each other. Those are the types of vendor partners we have, spanning EHR systems themselves, as well as the technology systems that talk to those other systems, as well as just paid professional services. Those are the types of industry partners that we have.
And another place to learn. We all need help from outside vendors, and to get everything in one place, talk to people about what they've used, what they've done. There's a lot of value. And what I like about the annual meeting is it's also a great kicking off. Like maybe you felt overwhelmed this year in your practice, and you're going back to, you're just sawing wood the entire time. You can use this meeting to start the habit, where you're going to get overwhelmed with all the stuff you learn. You're not going to implement everything, and that's okay. But you're going to be able to implement one or two things. And then you'll be more tied into understanding how that continuing education opportunity that you mentioned, that I think you called it a wall-free university, that allows you to continue on that education. And what I think both of you have benefited from is you don't go to the meeting once and it's all right, I learned everything, but every version of you 1 year later is going to pull something different out of the meeting because you're changing, the meeting's changing, the industry's changing, and it starts this flywheel of, acceleration in your career. Would either of you say that I'm off base with that?
Not at all. I think you're 100% correct.
Well, I know that one of the potential stalls that someone would have is they want to go, they find it interesting, and maybe they've heard discussions about budget internally, and maybe they're a little bit frightened about going to someone who has to tell you yes about spending the money and the time and going to this annual meeting. And so speaking related specifically to the idea that maybe you are concerned about actually asking leadership if this is an event that they can pay for and you can attend. I wanted to invite on Dr. Setzen to be able to speak from that perspective. And I'm curious, if you heard that from someone who's an administrator at another practice and they have this concern to ask, what would you say to that person?
Thank you, Zed. And I think that's unfortunately not an uncommon problem and perception today. And while whether you're in academic medicine or private practice, the challenges are the same. We're all faced with margin compression, increased complexity of care, and reducing reimbursement and so on. And so a lot of practices are adjudicating these decisions based on return on investment. And, in my opinion, I think the dyad leadership structure is critically important. And I think the physician working hand in hand with the administrator support team is essential and probably more important today than ever. And I'm a very firm believer in the dyad leadership structure. Supporting that requires this constant bidirectional communication. And I think exposure to the Ascent meeting, the annual academy meeting, and other business of medicine opportunities where interchange is a possibility. Learning and sharing best practices is critical. In my opinion, it's a very necessary investment, and the return on investment may not be measured strictly in dollars and cents on the day, because it's not transactional. It's relationship building, it's education, it's learning what else is happening in other practices and around the country. And there's only one way that happens, and that's meaningful dialogue and meaningful interaction with peers, colleagues, other administrators, physicians, and the like. And it's in that forum and in that setting that education, growth, and opportunities evolve and can be brought back to the local practice. So I'm a huge believer in supporting the administrative function. And in order to optimize success and facilitate that process, it does require capital expenditure to attend meetings and courses, and professional growth and development is essential, in my opinion.
It's interesting because there would be a potential scenario where a practice which can feel like they're on an island, and administrators can kind of feel like they're on an island. And even a decision like shifting to a different EMR. And the difference between the two scenarios is you make your decision based on the data you have access to, and you hope it's the right decision, and you probably complain about it later. Or when you have someone who is participating in something like Ascent, you have this gigantic network to be able to go ask, well, let me go find out what the 9 people who already made this decision, what do they believe? And what do they believe 6 months, 10 months, 2 years down the road that I can now inform my decision? And that's just one thing. That one thing is going to be a return on investment that justifies the entire engagement. Am I off base with that example?
Not at all, without a doubt. And, they may be small decisions and difficulties with access to care, digitizing and, mechanical processes that improve efficiency and workflow. a substantial consideration like an EHR, which can, translate into tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of a good decision or a bad decision. And learning from peers and colleagues and associates is the best way to do that. And so brainstorming, groupthink, what worked for you in this scenario? What does your phone access situation look like? We do urgent care. What do you do? What is your care model? How is that evolving? And what can I learn from you and you from me to be able to optimize efficiencies and outcomes and ultimately return on investment? And so, when you consider that the meetings and travel and these are limited engagements with limited expenditures. So I really think it's an essential part. And if it's not in a budget, it really needs to be.
That's great. So anyone listening, go ask for it and you can say he told you so. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that insight. Paul, do you have any other questions around that?
It's so helpful from an administrative perspective to have a physician back that sentiment. And so, again, I hope anyone listening will remember this, or even, if they need to show the podcast to their physician or owner or whatever, that this is so important. It's so helpful to be part of an association and have connection with people.
And, Paul, I'll put an exclamation mark on that because, there is a little bit of a physician mentality. I've done it this way for 30 years and you can't tell me the better way or a different way. I am fortunate enough to work with an administrator and a director of strategic ops who has a lot of experience, and I learn something new every day. And I'm better because of it. And, what Drew brings to the table, my practice is better. I couldn't do this on my own. And I'm the first to admit that, we're incrementally better because of the dyad leadership structure and because of the things that our chief strategy officer brings to the discussion. So we can all do better. We learn from each other and, it's a journey. And so what we can do to help each other along the way, make our practices better and the patient experience better. So I strongly support your organization and these collaborative opportunities. And thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts today.
Dr. Setzen, you're making me blush, and it's only because I really believe in this bidirectional dialogue with physicians and this leadership structure that you call the dyad, which is a physician practice leader and a physician leader working together hand in hand to tackle both strategic and tactical initiatives throughout the year, where the Ascent annual meeting this year in Orlando is the culmination of that. It's the interdigitating throughout the year that makes a difference.
Couldn't agree more.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. And I know we probably have given some motivation to people to take the step, make this the year, come to the meeting and start learning. Well, I hope you heard and understood clearly what Dr. Setzen was saying. And if there is any stall that you have in your mindset, go ask, because it will benefit everyone. And what it sounds like is it's really easy to feel like you're flying at the seat of your pants all the time, but there is actually a playbook to run an ENT practice.
Yeah, look, there's no traditional degree program that fully prepares someone to run an ENT practice. Most of us learn through our collective experience, some of the mistakes, the mentors along the way. And that's where Ascent and the annual meeting becomes indispensable. Ascent is the classroom, and we bring together this community of administrators, physician leaders who are actively doing the same work that you are doing when you're trying to think about whether you or not you want to come to the meeting. So we're building that evolving ENT Playbook, which is not stationary. It's evolving because of some of the changes in technologies that we're seeing evolve every day. And so it's super important, because the curriculum for that playbook changes, that you can have this year-round educational experience. And it's really important to attend the annual meeting. And we hope you will join us in Orlando.
Excellent. So get online, schedule, book. Let's go. And we'll see you guys later and we'll see you again on the Practice Leader Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Practice Leader Podcast. If you're feeling the weight of challenges in your practice, know this: the problems you're struggling with today don't have to remain problems. There is a path forward, and you're not walking it alone.
Each week, we'll be here with insights, ideas, and real-world conversations to help you move forward from chaos to clarity.
See you next week.